And ultimately, by doing that to counter the loss of diversity in human diets and in ecosystems, by conserving and promoting the wider use of biodiversity for food and nutrition. So, as I mentioned, it was a project that was funded by the Global Environment Facility. And in many ways, it was quite a unique project. It was the very first project that the GEF has funded that really was supporting the exploration of the potential of nutrient-rich, underutilized crops with the objective of improving diets and improving nutrition. And we did have to deal with the GEF process in terms of trying to convince the Global Environment Facility that this was a worthwhile thing to be and an admirable thing to be doing, given the GEF's focus largely on conservation aspects of biological diversity. And ultimately, from the very early design and planning stage to the termination of the project, about almost 8 years, it was a modest investment of $5 million across 4 countries, and it was led by Brazil, Kenya, Turkey, and Sri Lanka, with the support from the then Biodiversity International, who were the executing agency, and implementing support from both FAO and UNEP. And I think it's also important to mention that the BFN project was very much the only vehicle or the main vehicle that was driving the CBD's cross-cutting initiative on biodiversity for food nutrition, which commenced in 2006. And I just want to go back and give a little bit of a historical timeline to that. If you look in 2006, the CBD's cross-cutting initiative on biodiversity for food and nutrition was formally established by a decision taken at the CBD COP8. Then we had the GEF-funded Biodiversity for Food and Nutrition project that commenced in 2012. So we were very much aligned with the CBD, and we did a lot of our reporting through the CBD mechanism, working with countries to help them report through their national reports to the CBD, but also at a global level within the CBD and through the cross-cutting initiative, advocating for the importance of biodiversity for food and nutrition. And really, we were the only project within that global community, within the CBD, that was really doing that. But at the same time, because we were a main partner with FAO as an implementing agency, we were also targeting a lot of the global forums and global spaces within FAO, such as the International Treaty, but also the FAO Commission on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. And in 2013, we worked with partners to get a decision within the 14th regular session of the CGRFA of FAO, where nutrients and diets and foods for the first time were formally recognized as an ecosystem service. Then in 2014, we also working with countries and some of the other parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity. We were very much a platform for another important decision within the CBD that recognized for the first time the linkages between biodiversity, food and nutrition, and the need to enhance sustainable use of biodiversity to combat hunger and malnutrition. At the same time, we worked very closely with the FAO colleagues to support the development of the voluntary guidelines for mainstreaming biodiversity into policies, programs, and national and regional plans of action on nutrition. And they were endorsed at the CGRFA's 15th regular session. And as the project was finishing in 2019, we, again, working with FAO colleagues, showcased the achievements and the outcomes of the BFN project in the first State of the World report on biodiversity for food and agriculture. So that's a little bit of history and background to the BFN project, and which brings us to the present moment up to 2021. And no, I don't have to highlight that humanity and the world, we really are facing a perfect storm of exceeding planetary boundaries and the other highlighted global challenges that I mentioned earlier in the presentation that we're facing. And on the top of this, we are in the midst of a global pandemic, which is exacerbating a lot of this. Yet at the same time, the second half of this year really does provide the world, humanity, with a lifetime's opportunity to change how we as a species behave in terms of sustainable production and sustainable consumption, and to move away from business as usual to other things that are much more transformative in terms of food systems and sustainable food systems. And it's already been mentioned that later this year, we'll have the UN Food Systems Summit. I still think they're deciding on when that'll take place. I think it'll be sometime September or October. We've also got COP15 of the CBD, when the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework will be signed off on and unveiled. We've also again, I think it's in November, we've got the United Nations Framework on Climate Change Convention, COP26 in the UK. And at the same time, in December, we've got the Global Nutrition for Growth Summit happening in Tokyo. So a lot of global forums around this nexus of agriculture, nutrition, and health and environment that I mentioned. And of course, in the midst of all of that, we've got the second International Agrobiodiversity Congress, which will be taking place in November. And I encourage you all to participate in that. So a lot happening in the second half of this year, and really it is a unique and I think a once in a lifetime opportunity to deal with many of these global challenges and issues that that I've been describing. And I don't think, and I think if we do not get that sort of transformative change that we really need this year, then I don't know when it will ever take place. So hopefully we will see some very significant transformative decisions, and in the aftermath of all of these forums, a lot of changes in terms of how we deal with food production and food consumption. So just going back to the BFN, why work on local neglected and underutilized species? And again, everybody in this room, I don't think I need to say too much on this. I think you all recognize why. And I think it was quite clear in the context of the BFN project why we should be working on these kinds of neglected species. To begin with, they're more often than not nutrient rich compared to a lot of the more commonly consumed foods. They're also very much connected to local cultures. So in terms of diets, they're very culturally appropriate. They're also locally adapted. So in terms of dealing with climate variability, they perform well and require few inputs. And also they make significant contributions to local livelihoods. And I was debating with myself whether to actually include this slide, but then I thought this is actually a critical slide, because when you reflect back to what Dr. Singh was saying about the forthcoming United Nations Food Systems Summit, I think it's these neglected and underutilized species, especially those that are nutrient rich, that are central and critical to all 5 of the action tracks of the forthcoming food systems. So action track 1, improving nutrition, action track 2, shifting to sustainable production and consumption, action track 3, boosting nature positive production, action track 4, advancing equitable livelihoods, and action track 5, building resilience. I think neglected and underutilized species, local biodiversity has a critical and central role in dealing with all of those action tracks. Just a little bit of background in terms of the 4 countries that participated in the BFN project: Brazil, Turkey, Sri Lanka, and Kenya, representing 4 different continents. And they were all quite unique in many regards, very unique in terms of the nutrition and human health related issues that they were facing. Some had advanced along the nutrition transition spectrum a lot more than others. So in places like Brazil, a significant portion of the population were obese or overweight, but at the same time, there was still a significant portion of the population that were suffering from micronutrient deficiencies. But the great paradox, or the great irony for these 4 countries, is that they are also biodiversity hotspots, and they also have got considerable access to a lot of local nutrient-rich, neglected, and underutilized biodiversity. So a lot of nutritional and health problems, yet there are a number of potential local sustainable solutions available at the local level in these countries as well. And this is something that you commonly find across many, many countries, especially biodiverse hotspot countries. So coming back to the BFN project, and as I mentioned, the main objective of the project was to mainstream food biodiversity, mainstream the conservation and sustainable use of food biodiversity for improved nutrition and improved diets, and working across sectors. And to do that, the project used a 3-pillar approach, or a 3-pronged approach, if you want to use that. The first pillar was to look at strengthening or establishing the knowledge base for the nutritional value of much of this local food biodiversity, and using that knowledge base to try to influence policy and influence markets, identify markets, both conventional markets, and also look at trying to identify newly emerging markets. And then at the same time and in parallel, using innovative and novel approaches to raising awareness and improving education and understanding about the importance of local food biodiversity, or biodiversity for food nutrition, food and nutrition. And this was a project that worked across all of the key sectors in each of the countries: health, agriculture, nutrition, the environment, forestry, and also education, social development, and many other sectors, and across different sectors of society as well: academia, civil society, NGOs, and farmer organizations, and many other partners as well. So given the limited time available, I can't really go into much detail in terms of what was achieved or what was undertaken in each of the 4 countries. And really all I can do is provide a brief snapshot of what the project tried to do and what the project achieved, and just show some highlights. And really this is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of what the project undertook to do in each of the 4 countries. And starting with that first pillar, trying to strengthen the knowledge base, or the evidence base, for the nutritional value for local food biodiversity. Each country prioritized a number of species that they wanted to work on in that regard. And across the 4 countries, by the end of the project, I think we had undertaken the nutritional compositional analysis of about 200 more or less native food species or local food species across the 4 countries. And I'll just give you a glimpse of what we did in terms of each of the 4 countries. In Brazil, we developed a very strong national research capacity. We worked with more than 100 researchers from the main federal Brazilian universities across the 5 ecoregions of the country, and you can see that on the map on the left-hand side. And 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 are the main federal universities that we work with, and these were the decentralized hubs that we worked with to undertake the food composition in those 5 ecoregions, working very closely with professors, lecturers, postgraduate students, and also undergraduate students. And as I mentioned, that involved well in excess of 100 researchers in Brazil alone, and produced about 16 postgraduate research theses as a result. And at the end of the project, Brazil had collected or generated information on 70 species, which had been previously singled out or identified by a national initiative known as the Plants for the Future initiative, which we worked with very closely. And these are plant genetic resource experts nationally from across Brazil, and it's a membership initiative with about 3,000 different people working on much of this native biodiversity in Brazil. And I just selected out a few examples. Now, most of the species that we did work with did show a much higher nutritional value than many of the exotic or introduced species that are part of the food system in Brazil, such as the Amazonian fruit buriti, which, if you look at that graph, the top graph, had about 20 times more vitamin A compared to papaya and other exotic fruits that were common in the food system in Brazil. So the species highlighted in green are the native food biodiversity species, and those in the more pink color are the nutritional values for vitamin A and vitamin C of the either exotic or introduced species that are part of the food system in Brazil. And some photographs on the right-hand side illustrating some of this food biodiversity from Brazil. And this data was collected and has now been used to establish a national nutrition database, which there's a snapshot of that below the graphs. It's called the CYBER, it's part of the CYBER database, which is the National Information System on Brazilian Biodiversity. And now for the first time, it's got a component on the nutritional value of native food biodiversity in Brazil as part of that database. And because we were working closely with FAO, a lot of this information has also been fed into FAO's in-foods nutritional databases as well. So similarly, in Turkey, the focus in Turkey was on wild edible species. And again, I'll not spend too much time on these other 3 countries. It was a similar approach, building research capacity, prioritizing species to work on. There's some graphs there highlighting the micronutrient content on the left, iron content on right, calcium content, and comparing the superior contents of those 2 micronutrients in terms of wild species and cultivated species in gray. And again, using that data that emerged from that analysis is now part of Turkey's food composition national database. In Sri Lanka, we focused on about 58 food species with a strong focus on looking at traditional varieties of rice. And we looked at around about 30 traditional varieties of rice in Sri Lanka. And the graphic on the left-hand side of this slide indicates the iron and fiber content of some of those traditional varieties of rice, fiber in red, iron in the blue bar, and compared to the same contents on the extreme right for white rice. And again, feeding into Sri Lanka's national food composition database, but also this national portal that we established for local food biodiversity in Sri Lanka, which also hosts a considerable amount of traditional knowledge on many of these species and varieties. Then in Kenya, the focus was on African leafy vegetables, and there's a very significant diversity of leafy vegetables in East Africa, over 200 different types of African or indigenous leafy vegetables. And here we focused on about 8 species of African leafy vegetables. And again, similar graphics showing on the right-hand side in green, the superior iron content and beta-carotene content for those African leafy vegetables in green compared to the exotic and very, very commonly produced and consumed exotic cabbage, Brassica oleracea. And again, this data has fed into Kenya's national food composition database and their national food composition tables, and that's the updated version that we worked with FAO and produced in 2018. So what do you do with all of this kind of information, this extended knowledge base or evidence base on the nutritional food biodiversity once you have it? Well, you can do a lot. You can, in many ways, you can influence policy, and you can also identify new markets, conventional markets, and newly emerging markets. And this is again from starting with Brazil. I'll show you some examples from Brazil before showing some other examples. One of the major achievements of the project in Brazil was the publication and the formal endorsement of the very first national public policy on what is known as sociobiodiversity in Brazil. And sociobiodiversity just means the same thing as neglected and underutilized species, orphan crops, or whatever you want to call it. It's just a Portuguese, a specific terminology to Brazil. So Brazil, as far as I'm aware, is the very first country that now formally recognizes over 100 species of sociobiodiversity species that have got nutritional value. And that was a critical landmark achievement for the project in Brazil, because it enabled the project to look at targeting school feeding programs, public procurement. It's also helped with the establishment and development of labeling systems. Also, we worked very closely with the National Food-Based Dietary Guidelines in Brazil. Brazil's National Food-Based Dietary Guidelines are held up as the gold standard in terms of their relevance to sustainability, environmental sustainability, and cultural appropriateness of diets. So we worked very closely with Brazil's food-based dietary guidelines. So just to go back to the ordinance or the public policy on sociobiodiversity, this was a public policy that was signed by both the Brazilian Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Social Development. And as I mentioned, it's the very first sociobiodiversity ordinance to identify and define sociobiodiversity of nutritional importance. And this has been really important, as I mentioned, in terms of facilitating the mainstreaming of that socio-biodiversity or food biodiversity, if you prefer to call it that, into institutional food procurement, public procurement, school feeding programs, food-based dietary guidelines, and other opportunities. And this is just a snapshot of the Sociobiodiversity Ordinance public policy on the right-hand side. That, as I mentioned, that ordinance was critically important in terms of helping the project target the public food procurement of socio-biodiversity, because prior to that public policy, there was very little understanding of what socio-biodiversity was. So this was the very first time it was officially recognized. And as you can see, this is the revised National Public Food Procurement Program, the PAA in Brazil. And it's, unfortunately, it's in Portuguese, but you can see in yellow where it's highlighted, where it refers to this ordinance on socio-biodiversity. It was first published in 2016, but revised and updated in 2018. And this is critically important because mechanisms like the public food procurement in Brazil do have very useful entry points for food biodiversity and neglected and underutilized species. The national public food procurement in Brazil pays a premium for agroecological and organic foods, which constitutes a lot of this socio-biodiversity. At the same time, we were able to use this ordinance and a lot of the information around the nutritional value of food biodiversity to target school feeding programs. So based on the knowledge base and for the nutritional value of socio-biodiversity, also a lot of education and awareness building and capacity building of school canteen staff, nutritionists, dietitians, cooks, and chefs. We also work with canteen staff in school to develop novel preparation of meals that would appeal to school kids. We also work very closely with chefs as champions and influencers, and had a national recipe competition for the best school meals that used Brazilian socio-biodiversity. But going back again to the ordinance, I think a key achievement in terms of the work that we did with the National School Feeding Program in Brazil. And again, this is a national school feeding program that's the second largest in the world. India has the largest school feeding program in the world. And the Brazilian National School Feeding Program has got very valid entry points for socio-biodiversity, because it has got it's got a law that was put in place in 2009, whereby 30% of the food that's procured for schools must come from local family farmers. And in many instances, it's those local family farmers that are growing this or harvesting or managing this socio-biodiversity. And what I've highlighted here is from the Department of Education. And in 2018, we managed to work with the Department of Education in Brazil, who monitor the quality of the meals that are served in the school feeding program in Brazil. And for the very first time, as part of that monitoring process, we managed to get
Danny, please, you got muted. Can you unmute? Yeah, thank you.
Is that better?
That's fine.
Okay, so this was a very important achievement, the recognition of the importance of socio-biodiversity and the potential inclusion of or mainstreaming of socio-biodiversity into the school feeding program in Brazil. Okay, my slides are stuck. No, sorry. Did that go forward?
Yes.
Okay. And similarly in Kenya, we identified opportunities to link with local farmers to supply African leafy vegetables to schools as market. And again, this was using the WFP, the World Food Programme's homegrown school feeding approach. I'm not too sure how many of you are familiar with this, but again, this is a school feeding program approach that's very much trying to link school feeding to local growers and local producers of local food. So it's not only looking at the educational and personal development of the school population, but it's also looking at developing livelihoods and boosting agricultural development in the catchment areas of these schools. And for me personally, I think this is one of the most relevant potential game changers in terms of mobilizing local biodiversity in places that have this kind of homegrown school feeding approach. And we used a farmer business school approach to build capacity and empower local farmer organizations to improve the supply of African leafy vegetables. And at the same time, working with the schools to enhance capacity and to enable them to receive and handle a lot of these African leafy vegetables, because in many instances, they haven't been part of the school meals program to date. And of course, hand in hand with that was considerable nutrition education and awareness raising. And at the bottom, the arrows just indicate this homegrown school feeding framework value chain. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done across this value chain, including in the middle of that value chain in terms of working with schools and farmer organizations to get them to better understand the tendering and the procurement process that's required. Just some pictures from that homegrown school feeding approach using African leafy vegetables in Kenya. Some of the farmers harvesting their vegetables to bring to the schools. We also worked with the school kids in these schools to integrate African leafy vegetables into school gardens. And in fact, a lot of these students were selling these vegetables to the canteen, the school canteen. Some nutrition education awareness in the bottom left-hand side with one of the early childhood centers. And on the right-hand side at the bottom, the school students at one of the high schools receiving their African leafy vegetables as part of their school meals. And I can tell you, before this all took place, the dietary diversity and dietary quality of these meals were not particularly good. So I think this added a lot of value in terms of the dietary diversity and the micronutrients, especially that the students were receiving. So hand in hand with this strengthening this knowledge base and also trying to influence policy and also trying to establish new markets, you need to put a very significant effort into undertaking effective and innovative and sometimes novel approaches to raising awareness and improving understanding of local food biodiversity. And BFN, we tried many different things across the 4 countries, and it has to be obviously very local context specific. And all I can really do is present a flavor of what we did in those 4 countries. And again, starting with Brazil, we worked very closely with schools, not only in terms of school meals, but also in terms of school gardens. If you look closely at that school garden, and there's a huge school garden program in Brazil going back many years. But when you go to these gardens, they consist almost 100% of the time of exotic vegetables. So we tried to work with schools to introduce more local native biodiversity. We also worked very much with a lot of the main chefs and the gastronomy movement within Brazil. We worked very closely to use the knowledge that we had accrued or developed or produced through the project with the Ministry of Health in terms of promoting better healthy eating through schools. And we also established a number of sustainable management booklets and publications and guidelines for much of this socio-biodiversity in Brazil. In the top right-hand corner, these are 3 of 5 books that we produced with the Plants for the Future initiative, which covers all of Brazil's native socio-biodiversity across those 5 ecoregions. One of the main achievements towards the end of the project was producing this massive volume, which collected both traditional and new and novel recipes across those 5 ecoregions for much of this food socio-biodiversity. And we've used that to support a lot of the work that we implemented in Brazil. And if you look, and this is just an insert on the right-hand side, 2 pages from what is almost 700 pages long recipe book, national recipe book on Brazil's food biodiversity. It also shows you on the top right-hand corner which ecoregion that recipe comes from. We also work very closely with chefs, school canteen staff, nutritionists, school dietitians, did a lot of work with media and TV shows. The picture on the top left-hand side is working with a lot of the gastronomy departments at the universities. And the picture on the top right-hand side is a regional chefs gastronomy food competition that we had that brought chefs together from all of those ecoregions to showcase the recipes and the foods that they prepare from local socio-biodiversity, as well as presenting a lot of information on the agronomy and the background to that biodiversity as well. We did same things in Sri Lanka, but I just wanted to highlight the Helibajun food outlets that we implemented in Sri Lanka. And these were women-run food outlets for the procurement and consumption of local food biodiversity. And these were very, very beneficial in terms of enhancing the livelihoods of women's groups in many of the areas of Sri Lanka. And we started out with about 5 of these, and I think before the pandemic, there were up to about 30 throughout the country. Likewise, in Turkey, we put a lot of effort into working very closely with the local gastronomic movements, and we worked very closely with a number of the food festivals. And this is just highlighting one of those food festivals, the Alachati Herb Festival, which is a festival that focuses on wild species. And these are huge festivals. They get about 200,000 people over a weekend. We also work very closely with vocational schools, training the future chefs and the future cooks for Turkey to mainstream and create awareness about the importance of wild edibles and how to prepare wild edibles in their cuisine. And in Kenya, we also worked across many of these different elements, how to focus on food fairs, raising awareness in schools, and also there's highlighted here some of the traditional recipe booklets that we put together for Kenya. So just quickly in terms, and I'm just about to finish, in terms of some of the lessons that we learned from this project. It's very early, and those earlier slides that I showed present many of the achievements, the tangible outputs from this project. But the success of this kind of project really rests more on the intangible processes that must go into the planning and the implementation of a project, the consultations, the partnership building, the communication, the negotiation. So in terms of planning, working at this nexus, it really does require meticulous planning across all of the sectors to enable effective ownership and the buy-in that's needed. So partnership is key. And in terms of implementation, it really does require exceptionally good communication and flexibility between the multiple actors that you bring together, so that they work together and you facilitate that on these very nuanced and interrelated issues such as biodiversity, food and nutrition, and collaboration on that is key. And you know, in terms of Brazil, we must have worked with over 200 partners in terms of planning and implementation. And unfortunately, with the short time that I have available, it's not possible to describe how we did do that. And it is complex and it is complicated, and it does require meticulous attention to detail. On point of entry, I've mentioned where we identified entry points, especially in Brazil, in terms of linking to school feeding, because they've got in place mechanisms where a certain proportion of the food has to be procured from local farming, family farmers. That's a very effective entry point. So my key message here would be to be always ambitious in your vision. And I think if you look at across the 5 action tracks for the UN food system game changers, a lot of the solutions that are being identified as part of that process are very much aligned with local, neglected and underutilized nutrient-rich foods. So I think there's a lot of potential for local agrobiodiversity as a game changer within the forthcoming Food Systems Summit. And success at country level is not enough. We need to, in terms of scalability, it requires considerable advocacy and action at the global level. And we tried to do this by engaging through global institutions such as the CBD, WHO, FAO, the United Nations Steering Committee on Nutrition, and many more. So I'm almost just about to finish. Before finishing, I just wanted to highlight, we produced a massive amount of tools, publications, and resources. This slide just highlights some of these. We had our own mainstreaming toolkit. We produced an e-learning course, many policy briefs, about 15 books. We've also got about 16 recipe books and about 20 research theses. They're also all available free to download on the BFN website. In terms of working globally and global reports and relevant publications, we worked very closely with the World Health Organization in producing this document on the left-hand side, which is a guidance note on mainstreaming biodiversity for food and nutrition and health. We also worked very closely with the CBD and World Health Organization to produce the report in the middle, Connecting Global Priorities, Biodiversity and Human Health, and BFN contributed 2 chapters on that. That was published back in 2015. And as I mentioned, on the right-hand side, we worked very closely with FAO to produce these voluntary guidelines for mainstreaming biodiversity into policies, programs, and national and regional plans of action on nutrition. Dr. Halawat mentioned at the very outset that as part of the recent attainment of 50 years of the CGIAR, the Biodiversity for Food and Nutrition project was selected as one of the key innovations for that milestone. And finally, my final slide, and quite possibly the most important slide. I think this is especially important for those who might be considering or wanting to implement a project similar to the BFN project, to design and plan a BFN project. And in that regard, the publication that we brought out last year in red, the Biodiversity Food and Nutrition Project, is central to that. In that book, we described the background, the planning, the implementation, the partnership building, the achievements, the lessons learned, and the recommendations from the BFN. So essentially, that provides a roadmap for any partners, any country that would like to try and implement something similar to the BFN project. And on the right-hand side, we've got the Agrobiodiversity, School Gardens, and Healthy Diets book, which pulls together a lot of the experiences from the schools work that we did through the BFN project. Both of these books are published by Routledge, but they're open access and they're available freely to download. And anybody who's interested is quite welcome to get in touch with me, and I'll indicate how to do that. So I just wanted to finish off by again thanking the organizers for the opportunity to participate in this important event today. I also wanted to highlight that the Alliance is committed to working with the National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources and other national partners in India, if there is interest in trying to develop a similar initiative to the BFN project. And I am personally committed to working with partners in India to facilitate and realize such a thing if there is interest in a BFN type approach, whether that is through the GEF process or whether it's through some other funding mechanism. So thank you again, everyone, and thank you again for the opportunity to participate and tell you all about the BFN project. It's been a great privilege and an honor, and I thank the organizers again for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hunter, for that beautiful lecture. Your contributions to biodiversity management is a pan-global repute and truly merits a very deep acknowledgement. Now, our audience would definitely want to interact with you on this topic. We have a positive times, but still we can have a few questions from the audience now.
Maybe if Danny can exit, yeah, that's good.
Has it gone?
Yeah, that's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
Hello, Danny. This is Ashutosh Sarkar from ICARDA. So I am very much thankful to you and enjoyed your presentation thoroughly. I have just one question. That is a very good discovery that you have already done under the project, the BFN project. Like that in Brazil, that buriti or camu, and also in Turkey, nuts and these fruits. Like in Sri Lanka, rice, and then in Kenya, it is leafy vegetables. So very excellent, that findings that you have shown that some of the species are having high level of iron, high level of that vitamin A as well as vitamin C. It's very good. So my last question is that what is the affordability or availability of those? I understand that those are underutilized or under-researched, and it will be low. But what about the affordability of the common people to reach to those species for their nutrition support, that in these countries? Yeah. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you. I can go ahead and respond to Dr. Sarkar.
Yes.
Yeah, a very important question, availability and affordability. And even in relation to the iron and other micronutrients availability, and this is getting away from the topic, because we were only looking at the fresh food, and we weren't looking at availability through recipes and that kind of thing, because this is very expensive. But again, this was just a pilot project, and in terms of achievement, it was very, very limited. We certainly did, working with things like African leafy vegetables, we did enhance the market, and I think that did contribute to a significant reduction in the cost of African leafy vegetables. So if you look at the situation in Nairobi, the cost of African leafy vegetables is quite considerable compared to a lot of the other foods, especially in some of the restaurants in Nairobi. But in terms of the local production and what we were doing with the school feeding program with the schools and going directly through the local farmer organizations, it was much more affordable to the schools compared to the normal modus operandi of those schools going through middlemen. And not only was it more affordable to the schools and more available, the schools did make a considerable saving in terms of their school meals budgets. but I think at a wider level, there's much more that that needs to be done, I think, in terms of enhancing the availability and affordability of much of these foods, because the infrastructure, the policies are just not in place. Now, they're still outweighed by subsidies for other more common staples, and the infrastructure to and the capacity of local SMEs, micro and medium-sized enterprises, is still very limited in terms of producing these on a larger scale. So I think what we demonstrated at a very micro level is an example of what is possible. But I think in terms of taking that to scale and in relation to the wider issue of the lack of affordability and availability of many of these neglected and underutilized species, especially locally available nutrient-rich fruits and vegetables, will require a lot of work and a lot of additional changes in terms of the policy and the enabling environment and the infrastructure to produce a lot of these.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. Thank you very much. It is really understandable that these are the underutilized and those are not in the market. And I very much appreciate the achievement that you have done under this project. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it seems we have a little paucity of time, so maybe we need to cut short our interaction session a little. You all are invited to kindly post your questions and suggestions in the chat box so that we can pass on the questions and continue the discussion with Dr. Hunter. Now, with those global viewpoints, let's shift home. We have with us 5 conservative farmers from diverse parts of the country who are going to share their experiences on today's auspicious occasion. And for this, let me request Dr. K.P. Mahapatra, Principal Scientist from Division of Germplasm Evaluation, to kindly come forward and coordinate this program.
Good afternoon to all. Sabko mere namaskar. Chief guest of the today's function, the Secretary there and DGICAR, all the esteemed Deputy Director Generals, all the Vice Chancellors, Director IRI, Directors, the stalwarts of PGR who are hooked into this meeting, dear students and my colleagues, and the most valuable farmers. For the information of the viewers, while planning to celebrate this Biodiversity Day function, it was realized that the high-yielding varieties have replaced most of the traditional varieties from the fields. So the genetic base of most of the crops have become very less in the commercial cultivations. But still, some farmers, some entrepreneurs, and some traditional practitioners have conserved many of these genetic diversity, the species, ecosystem diversity, and some of the plants. So it was planned and it was thought to listen to their views, their perspective, those farmers or the entrepreneurs who are holding into how they are utilizing and how they are enthused to maintain this diversity. So to take this discussion forward, we have selected 6 farmers across India, north, south, east, west, northeast, so to represent the farmers' view of the whole of the country. To begin with, we'll start with the farmer from Shimla, from the Kodgarh region, Sri Gopal Mehtaji, who is primarily an apple cultivar from Kodgarh. Kodgarh is the area where the commercial cultivation of apple started in Himachal. Mr. Mehta has been doing organic cultivation of apple. He got the certification way back in 2008. So he's a very enthusiastic farmer, maintains at around 10,000 plants of many varieties of apple and other crops. So may I request Sri Mehtaji to start his talk. Mehtaji.
धन्यवाद। नमस्कार। जैव विविधता दिवस पर मेरा सबको सादर प्रणाम। मेरी आवाज आ रही जी?
हाँ जी आ रही है। प्लीज बताइए।
मेरा नाम गोपाल मेहता है। मैं सेब बहुल क्षेत्र कोटगढ़ जिला शिमला हिमाचल प्रदेश का रहने वाला हूँ। मैं गर्व के साथ कहता हूं कि मैं एक किसान हूं। जैव विविधता एक अतुल्य खजाना है जिसको बढ़ाना हमारा सबका कर्तव्य है। जैव विविधता को बढ़ाने के लिए किसानों और बागवानों को मिलकर काम करना होगा। मेरी सभी वैज्ञानिकों से नम्र निवेदन है कि किसानों को जैव विविधता पर कार्य करने के लिए प्रेरित करें। मेरे पास जैव विविधता के तहत विभिन्न प्रकार की फसलें हैं। खासकर मेरी फसलें जो है फलदार पौधों की है। मेरे पास तकरीबन 10,000 पौधे हैं। मेरे पास सेब की 20 किस्में, नाशपाती की 8 किस्में, प्लम की 8 किस्में, चेरी की 4 किस्में, आड़ू की 6 किस्में, आम की 6 किस्में, कीवी की 2 किस्में और इसके अलावा लीची, अनार, खुमानी, बादाम आदि है। जैव विविधता का एक सबसे बड़ा फायदा किसानों को खेतों में ज्यादा वैरायटी जब होती है तो क्रॉस पॉलिनेशन होता है और ये हेल्दी पॉलिनेशन से इसका जो फ्रूट की क्वालिटी होती है वो भी हेल्दी होती है और बहुत अच्छी होती है। आईसीआर के तहत NBPGR शिमला केंद्र ने सन 1965 में कीवी की पहली बार आयात किया और आज पूरे हिमालय श्रृंखला में 17,000 हेक्टेयर क्षेत्र में कीवी पैदा हो रही है। ये एंटीऑक्सीडेंट है जो कि बहुत सारी बीमारियों को दूर करता है और इसकी पौष्टिकता, ये बहुत पौष्टिक फल है। मैं अपनी फसल आड़ू से शुरू करता हूं और अक्टूबर-नवंबर में कीवी के साथ खत्म करता हूं। आज शिमला केंद्र में 32 किस्म की कीवी आ गई हुई है। मैं अपनी सारी फसल जैविक तरीके से तैयार करता हूं। मैं एक ऑर्गेनिक सर्टिफाइड किसान हूं। मेरी सर्टिफिकेशन 2008 में वन सर्ट एशिया एग्री सर्टिफिकेशन एजेंसी से हुई है। ये हमारा क्षेत्र जो है वो टेम्परेट जोन है। जो पहाड़ी क्षेत्र होने टेम्परेट जोन में आम तैयार करना एक काफी मुश्किल काम है। मैंने जैविक तरीके से आम तैयार किया है। मुझे तत्कालीन मुख्यमंत्री श्री प्रेम कुमार धूमल जी ने 15 अगस्त 2008 को एक उत्कृष्ट किसान का प्रथम पुरस्कार दिया। सन 2005 में मेरी मुलाकात डॉक्टर तेज प्रसाद जी से हुई जो आजकल गोविंदवाड़ा पंतनगर उत्तराखंड में वाइस चांसलर के पद पर कार्यरत है। उन्होंने मुझे जैविक खेती का ज्ञान दिया और उनके साथ मिलकर जैविक खेती पर काम किया। सन 2007 से लेकर सन 2010 तक डॉक्टर तेज प्रताप जी हिमाचल प्रदेश एग्रीकल्चर यूनिवर्सिटी पालमपुर में बतौर वाइस चांसलर के पद पर कार्यरत थे। हमने मिलकर प्रदेश के लिए ऑर्गेनिक में बहुत काम किया। सन 2015 में आचार्य श्री देवव्रत जी ने हिमाचल प्रदेश के राज्यपाल का पद ग्रहण किया। वो हिमाचल को विष मुक्त और नशा मुक्त करना चाहते थे। इसी संदर्भ में मैं उनसे मुलाकात की और जैविक खेती पर चर्चा की। उन्होंने मुझे साथ मिलकर काम करने का आग्रह किया। 15 अक्टूबर 2015 को राज्यपाल महोदय ने हॉर्टिकल्चर यूनिवर्सिटी नौणी में प्राकृतिक खेती का एक शिविर आयोजित किया जिसके मुख्य प्रशिक्षक डॉक्टर सुभाष पालेकर जी थे। ये शिविर 4 दिन तक चला जिसमें प्रदेश के विभिन्न जिलों के किसानों ने भाग लिया और इसके साथ यूनिवर्सिटी के वैज्ञानिकों और छात्रों ने भी भाग लिया। इस शिविर की मुख्य बात यह थी कि राज्यपाल महोदय 4 दिन तक सवेरे से शाम तक एक ट्रेनीज की भांति भाग लिया जिससे कि किसानों का मनोबल बढ़ा है। ये शायद पहला मौका होगा कोई राज्यपाल इस तरह से किसी ट्रेनिंग कैंप में बैठे हो। ये उनका किसानों के प्रति प्रेम दर्शाता है। डॉक्टर सुभाष पालेकर जी ने किसानों से अनुरोध किया कि वो जैव विविधता अपनाने पर जोर अपनाएं क्योंकि जैव विविधता से किसानों की आय में बढ़ोतरी होगी। प्राकृतिक खेती द्वारा तैयार किया गया अनाज और फल स्वादिष्ट होता है और इसकी शेल्फ लाइफ काफी ज्यादा होती है, जिसका उदाहरण मैं आपके सामने देता हूं। सन 2017 में मैंने राज्यपाल महोदय को प्राकृतिक खेती से तैयार आड़ू का डिब्बा दिया, जिसका जिक्र राज्यपाल जी हर मीटिंग में करते हैं, यहाँ तक कि उन्होंने इसका जिक्र लोकसभा संवाद में भी किया। एक दफा उनके साथ उसी दौरान उनका एक मित्र हरियाणा से आया, उन्होंने सोलन से एक आड़ू का डिब्बी लाया जो केमिकल से तैयार हुआ था। उन्होंने डब्बा खोला, एक दिन खाया, दूसरे दिन आलू खराब होने लगा, तीसरे दिन आलू बिल्कुल खराब हो गया। फिर उन्होंने मेरा दिया और डिब्बा खोला, जो कि 5 दिन के बाद खोला, और उनके मन में ये शंका थी शायद आलू खराब हो गया होगा, पर वो आड़ू का एक भी दाना खराब नहीं हो, बिल्कुल फ्रेश था। उनका कहना है कि उन्होंने आड़ू उसके बाद 13 दिन तक और खाया, मतलब कुल आड़ू 18 दिन तक ठीक रहा, एक भी दाना उसमें से सड़ा नहीं। तो ये जैविक खेती का एक सफल है। मैं स्प्रे के लिए जड़ी बूटियां और दवाइयों का तैयार करता हूं, जिसे कीटनाशक बनाते हैं। और फंगस के लिए हम कुछ दूध और दही से फंजीसाइड तैयार करते हैं, जो मैं खेतों में अपने खाद के यूज में जीवामृत, जो गोबर और गौमूत्र से बना होता है, का करते हैं, और स्प्रे में भी एज ए माइक्रोन्यूट्रिएंट्स के तौर पर इसका छिड़काव करते हैं, जिसका बहुत अच्छा लाभ होता है। हमारे हिमाचल प्रदेश में सेब के बगीचों में मोर्सिलोना और माइट का बहुत अटैक होता है, परंतु मैं अपने बगीचे में प्राकृतिक तौर से बनी दवाइयों का छिड़काव करता हूं, जिसमें से बगीचे में ना तो मेरे पास मोर्सिलोना है और ना ही मेरे बगीचे में माइट है। मैंने इस हेतु एक दफा डॉक्टर तेज प्रताप जी से बात करी कि इसका क्या कारण है। उन्होंने मुझे कहा है कि आप 2005 से ऑर्गेनिक खेती कर रहे हैं और आप ऑर्गेनिक छिड़काव कर रहे हैं, तो इसलिए आपके बगीचे में प्रीडेटर बहुत ज्यादा हो रहे हैं, जो नेचुरली तौर पर माइट को और वो दूसरी इसको खा जाता है। तो इस तरह से खा जाता है। पौष्टिक सुरक्षा एक चुनौती है, इसके लिए जैविक फल सब्जी और जैव विविधता मददगार होगी। आने वाले समय सन 2050 तक संसार की जनसंख्या लगभग 9.2 बिलियन होने का अनुमान है, जिसके तहत कुपोषण को बचाने के लिए वैश्विक चुनौती होगी। इस वैश्विक चुनौती से बचने के लिए हमें जैव विविधता एवं प्राकृतिक खेती पर जोर देना होगा। इस चुनौती को सामना करने के लिए बस यही एकमात्र साधन है। आने वाले समय में ये नीचे लिखी फसलों की मांग होगी, जिसमें पहला नंबर तिलहन वाली फसलों का है, दूसरा नंबर फल और सब्जी है, उसके बाद दलहन की दालों की वाली फसल, चौथा नंबर अनाज का आता है, फिर अन्य फसलें हैं। इस वैश्विक कुपोषण को बचाने के लिए और इसकी आपूर्ति करने के लिए विज्ञानी और किसानों को मिलकर जैव विविधता और प्राकृतिक खेती पर जोर देना होगा। ये इसका एक समाधान है। धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद मेहता जी। तो व्यूअर्स के लिए मेरा ये निवेदन है कि अंत में जब सारे किसानों की प्रेजेंटेशन हो जाएगा, इफ़ वी हैव टाइम, फिर हम उसमें थोड़ा बहुत डिस्कशन कर लेंगे, क्योंकि समय की काफ़ी कमी है, हम लोग वी आर रनिंग आउट ऑफ टाइम। सो धन्यवाद मेहता जी। जो नेक्स्ट किसान है वो श्री चैन सिंह जी है, जो जोधपुर से हैं। ये बाजरी, ट्रेडिशनल बाजरी वगैरह लगाते हैं, उसके साथ कई सारे फसलें अपने उसमें खेत में लगाते हैं। मैं अभी चैन सिंह जी को बोलूँगा, वो अपना प्रेजेंटेशन दें यहाँ पे। चैन सिंह जी, हाँ जी,
आवाज आ रही है सर?
हाँ बिल्कुल, आप बोलिए, शुरू करिए।
हेलो,
हाँ जी, आप शुरू करिए।
आदरणीय डीजी साहब, डॉक्टर टी महापात्रा, डॉक्टर कुलदीप सिंह जी एवं समस्त अधिकारीगण, ये मेरे सभी किसान भाइयों को राम राम सा, खमा गणी। मैं चैन सिंह, स्वरूप अमर सिंह जी, गांव बेगड़िया, तहसील ओसिया, जिला जोधपुर, राजस्थान, प्रकार के देसी बीजों से खेती करता हूं और एक एफपीओ भी चलाता हूं। श्रीमान, देसी बीजों से पैदावार में कमी श्रीमान देशी बीजों से पैदावार में लगभग 3 क्विंटल प्रति एकड़ में कमी होती है, लेकिन इनका बाजार भाव ज्यादा होने से इनकी उपज की भरपाई हो जाती है। देसी प्रजाति की बात करें तो मैं मूंछ वाली बाजरी, पीली बाजरी जो 2500 रुपए प्रति क्विंटल बिकती है, जिसे हमें अच्छा लाभ मिलता है, एवं देसी मिर्च की खेती करता हूँ। इन सबको करके मैं मेरे परिवार के सभी सदस्यों का भरण पोषण कर पा रहा हूँ। इसके अलावा मैं मूंग, मोठ, सरसों, प्याज, लहसुन, जीरा का बीज उत्पादन करता हूँ एवं 30 से ज्यादा किसान भाइयों को आपूर्ति करता हूँ। NBPGR जोधपुर एवं जैव की सहायता से हमने कमोस्ती सीड बैंक की स्थापना की है, जिसे बीजों का संरक्षण करने में मदद मिल रही है। अगर फल एवं सब्जियां एवं औषधीय पौधे जैसे अश्वगंधा, कालमेघ, आंवला तथा सोलर सामग्री मिल जाए तो मुझे खुशी मिलेगी। जैसा कि हमारे यहाँ बरसात की कमी होती है और यहाँ बलुई मृदा पाई जाती है। हाँ सर, यहाँ तक कि गर्मियों में तापमान 48 डिग्री सेल्सियस तक चला जाता है। अगर किस प्रकार के फल सब्जियां उगाने की ट्रेनिंग मिल जाए तो हम धन्यवाद के पात्र होंगे। राम राम सा खमा गणी। और हमारे जो सीड बैंक की बीज है वो आपको दिखा देते हैं सर। ये जो बाजरी है, जो संकर बाजरी है सर, ये पीली बाजरी, ये जो है मूंछ वाली बाजरी, ये मोठ दाल है, ये मूंग दाल है, ये तिलहन है, ये जो गंवार है जो पशुओं के लिए पौष्टिक आहार है, ये मेथी है, ये जो है उमटी है जो यहाँ राजस्थान में पाया जाता है, जो पौष्टिक होते हैं खाने के लिए, देसी सब्जी है। ये जो है प्याज के बीज है, ये सरसों, पीली सरसों, ये जो है ये राई है, ये जो है टिड्डी आती है उसके बीज है, ये जो है खरबूज के बीज है, ये जो है मिर्ची के बीज है, ये जो है अरंडी के बीज है, ये जो है जीरा है, ये गाजर के बीज है, ये देसी धनिया है, ये जो है बैंगन के बीज है, ये पालक है, ये सफेद तिलहन है, ये गेहूं है, ये जो इमली के बीज प्लस खजूर के बीज है।
क्यों स्लाइड चेंज नहीं हो रही है?
ये जो बड़ी
वो स्लाइड्स नहीं है, he is
अच्छा,
showing live and because of bandwidth problem there, because he is using his mobile phone, so perhaps it is not moving, that's it.
चैन सिंह जी, आपका फिगर नहीं आ रही है क्योंकि शायद तो कनेक्टिविटी थोड़ी प्रॉब्लम है। आप बोल दीजिए जो बोलना चाह रहे थे, ये हमने सुन लिया आपसे, आप क्या क्या फसल उगाते हैं, और बाकी जो आपके कहने को है वो आप उसको कह के समाप्त करिए, क्योंकि वो फोटो दिख नहीं रहा है, कुछ इंटरनेट की प्रॉब्लम है आपकी तरफ से।
हाँ सर, तो यहाँ तो सर वही इलाका है नेटवर्क की प्रॉब्लम।
कोई बात नहीं, आप अपनी बात रखिए, ठीक है।
हाँ यही है तो सर, बरसात की कमी होती है, जैसे
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आपको आपकी बात रखने के लिए। Now we have an interesting person, Dr. M. Srinivas Rao. He is a medical practitioner but adopted agriculture and constituted a FPO and doing some good cultivation of dragon fruit. So before going for his talks, he has a very small video presentation which is around 3.2 minutes. I'd request Dr. Bhardwaj to upload that video. After that, Dr. Srinivas Rao will speak for about a minute or two. Dr. Bhardwaj, please.
Do we have a sound behind this, or it's just like this only?
It has a sound. Bhardwaj साहब थोड़ा sound को on करिए. Sound को on करिए. हाँ.
नहीं, आवाज नहीं आ रही.
Can I play the video, sir?
Yeah, play.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Can you please stop this?
आप छोड़ दीजिए, ये श्रीनिवास राव साहब उसको प्ले करेंगे। राव साहब आप प्ले कर सकते हैं?
Yes, sir.
Then you play it. भारद्वाज जी इसको अनशेयर कर दीजिए।
Yes, sir. Are you able to see my screen, sir?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes.
The dragon fruit has become increasingly popular in India in recent years. Deccan Exotics, a Hyderabad-based farmers' initiative, has played a pivotal role in popularizing the fruit. Back in 2016, Dr. Srinivas Rao, hailing from an agricultural family in Telangana, decided to follow in his father's footsteps, Mr. Prasad Rao, and pursue farming to increase the economic viability. Deccan Exotics was then launched in 2016 with the three primary goals. First, to popularize and sustain dragon fruit farming and consumption across India, acquire and disseminate knowledge on dragon fruit cultivation to farmers, and the third one, engage in dragon fruit research, build plant diversity, and conserve germplasm. The primary intention was to promote a crop that made farming more economically viable. Hence, dragon fruit was the perfect response. Dr. Srinivas traveled to over 13 countries, discovering farming best practices and techniques, collaborated extensively on research, and started connecting with farmers to share the knowledge and expertise to implement the same, which fits the Indian geographic conditions while ensuring it's less cost effective. Thus was born Deccan Exotics FPO, a collective of over 350 dragon fruit farmers in 20 states across India, which benefits from farming services. Since inception, Deccan Exotics FPO has trained over 4,000 farmers at its Hyderabad facility. Deccan Exotics FPO is proudly associated with leading dragon fruit farming and research organizations across the globe. The aim of establishing the Deccan Exotics Farmer Producer Organization was multifold. To start with, to bridge the gap between farmers and the scientific community, to collect high-yielding cultivars and distribute to farmers as per conditions, R&D activities, and build a network of farmers across India. And nonetheless, to create awareness about dragon fruit, benefits about nutrition content, and children awareness program. Some of the contributions made by the FPO are, it had made many contributions towards capacity building, plant genetic resource management, maintaining a field gene bank, and has applied for permission to import various commercially grown cultivars through NBPGR, ensuring technical assistance and protocol standardization, engaged actively in research and innovation with off-season production, collaborating with NBPGR to identify and documentation of disease and pest management, carrying out research activities to increase the shelf life of the fruit, processing various value-added products in association with CFTRI, conducting awareness programs to increase the popularity of dragon fruit. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Very good afternoon and happy International Biodiversity Day to everyone. And special thanks to NBPGR for organizing this event today and recognizing farmers across India. I am Dr. Srinivas from Deccan Exotic Farmer Produce Organization. And the request to NBPGR and ICAR, the registration of elite varieties with resistance or tolerance to biotic and abiotic stress identified, to obtain status of field gene bank, assistance in developing low-cost modified atmospheric packaging, that is a relative humidity which prevents the increasing the shelf life and preserving the moisture, as well as encourage public and private partnership modes for FPOs to carry out R&D activities. Thank you, and stay safe during the pandemic, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So now we'll move on to Trishur. We have a farmer, Mr. Prasid Thail. He has conserved more than 125 rice land races and many other crops. So may I now request Dr. Bharadwaj to upload his video And after that, Mr. Thail may speak few of his expectations from ICR and other research system. Dr. Bhardwaj, please.
Land of paddy fields. It was home to high-value scented land races like Mullanchana, the GI tag Gandagashala, Jeeragashala, Kaima, Kuruva, Palgundi, and many more. This high-range ecosystem and its land races are now facing the threat of extinction. Shri Prasid Kumar, hailing from Sultan Batteri in Wayanad, is a farmer conservator who is passionately conserving the rice land races of Wayanad. He maintains over 45 named land races of Wayanad and adjoining Coorg district of Karnataka by annually cultivating them in small plots. Here you can see that he has depicted rice diversity in the form of paddy art using the natural hues of these traditional land races. Mr. Prasid has also been actively associated with NBPGR for their on-farm conservation efforts being implemented through the regional station. The extinct Wayanadan rice land race Harupet was retrieved from the National Gene Bank, and for the last 2 years he is actively pursuing its revival. The reintroduction of another extinct rice land race, Karuvachi, in the tribal Wayanadan belt also goes to his credit. He takes the help of elders in the community to identify the original plant type prior to conservation. Mr. Prasid says that as a farmer, it is his social obligation to ensure that the heritage wealth he inherited from his forefathers should be kept alive for future generations. At a time when are abandoning rice cultivation, this youngster is a ray of hope when he states that agriculture is indeed profitable and he earns a living through rice farming. His strategy for sustaining these conservation efforts are very methodical and practical. Being techno-savvy, he finds online markets for the rice varieties Jeeragashala, Gandagashala, Kaima, Nagara, etc. at premium price. A small part of this profit is plowed back into his conservation efforts. On this occasion of celebrating biodiversity and its custodians, let's applaud and congratulate Mr. Prasid Kumar, a true warrior of plant genetic resources.
Thank you. May I now request Mr. Prasid Kumar to speak his words. Bhardwaj,
हेलो
शेयर कर दीजिए.
सबको नमस्कार. मेरा नाम प्रसिद्ध कुमार from Wayanad district, Kerala state. Sir, being in the high rainfall, high humid Wayanad plateau, seed storage beyond a season is not a possible. And
ये ऐसा CPU अलग से नहीं है, मॉनिटर के पीछे में CPU
affected maintenance of this diversity. If ICAR and NBPGR facilitate setting up of a community seed bank, I can continue this traditional and the tribal farmers will also be benefited. I thank ICAR and the NBPGR for giving me this opportunity. They participate in this program and express my views. Thank you. Once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And next we move on to Sri Lalit Mohan Sahu, who is from Deogarh district of Odisha. He is a traditional practitioner, teacher, and he has been maintaining many diverse medicinal plants which are used for treating many ailments. Traditionally, he has been awarded with many awards. He has many other accolades. So without wasting any more time, I'd request Sri Lalit Mohan Sahu from Deogarh district, Deogarh area from Odisha to present his views. Please, sir.
धन्यवाद सर. ओम। मान्यवर महानिर्देशक भारतीय कृषि गवेषणा और शिक्षा परिषद, सचिव कृषि गवेषणा और शिक्षा विभाग भारत सरकार तथा भारत के सभी निर्देशक वृंदों, वैज्ञानिक वृंदों और अधिकारी वृंदों तथा सभी महानुभावों को मेरा सप्रेम प्रणाम। आज मैं एक पवित्र दिन के लिए आप सभी को बधाई दे रहा हूं। मैं वैद्य ललित मोहन साहू हूं। मैं 7 पीढ़ियों का एक चिकित्सक हूं। हर रोज मेरे पास 10 से 15 रोगी इलाज के लिए आते हैं। बचपन के 15 साल के बाद मैं मेरे पिताजी, दादाजी और गुरुजनों से सेवा करने का तरीका अपनाया। पढ़ाई के बाद नौकरी तो मिल गई, लेकिन रोगी सेवा करने की इच्छा मेरे मन में थी। तो उनके पढ़ने के साथ साथ नई किताबें आई। भारत सरकार, उड़ीसा सरकार मेरे लिए केरला, कलकत्ता, राजस्थान, मुंबई, दिल्ली आदि में ट्रेनिंग की सुविधाएं दी। ज्ञान वृद्धि की सुविधाएं जुट गई। धीरे धीरे रोगियों की संख्या बढ़ने लगी। विशेषकर वात, बुखार, टीबी, गर्भाशय रोगी, आस, पैरालिसिस रोगी, शिशु रोगी आदि अधिक मेरे पास आते हैं। उड़ीसा के देवगढ़, संबलपुर, झारसुगुड़ा, सुंदरगढ़, बलांगीर, अनुगुल, कटक, ढेंकानाल जिला से अधिक रोगी मेरे पास आते हैं। उड़ीसा के अलावा छत्तीसगढ़, गुजरात, मध्य प्रदेश, बिहार, दिल्ली आदि से रोगी मेरे पास भी आया करते हैं। उनको सफलता भी मिलती है। विदेश से भी लोग, ऑस्ट्रेलिया, जापान, हांगकांग आदि से भी रोगी मेरे पास आकर वे सफलता पा रहे हैं। मैं टेबलेट, औले, घृत, तेल, चूर्ण, मोदक बनाकर रोगियों को दे रहा हूँ। दवाई बनाने के लिए मेरे पास कुछ साधन तो उपलब्ध हैं, कुछ भी नहीं है। हर रोज मेरे को सहायता देने के लिए 10 से 15 आदमी मौजूद हैं। बचपन से लेकर आज तक मैं करीब 2.5 लाख से 3 लाख रोगियों की सेवा कर चुकी हूँ। सुख की बात है कि अनेक रोगियों को बहुत बहुत सफलताएं मिलती हैं। दूरदर्शन, आकाशवाणी, सरकारी, उड़िया सरकार, जन साधारण, कलेक्टर, एसपी, एफओ, वन विभाग आदि मुझे बहुत सेवा दे रहे हैं। इनके अलावा वन विभाग, वैद्य संघ, आरसेटी, भारत सरकार के ग्रामीण आत्मनियुक्ति योजना, भारत सरकार के नेहरू युवा केंद्र, एनजीओ संस्था, महिला संघ आदि में भी मैं ट्रेनिंग दे रहा हूँ। पर्यावरण सुरक्षा आदि के बारे में बता रहा हूँ। रोगी सेवा का मूल है मेडिसिनल प्लांट्स। इसके बिना कुछ नहीं हो सकेगा। मैं एक जंगली परिवेश में जन्म लिया था। पर्यावरण, वृक्षलता, पशु पक्षी मेरे लिए सब कुछ है, मेरे जीवन है। अपने हाथ से बनाई गई प्रभावशाली कीमती दवाई और मेरी इच्छा अधिक होने के कारण मैं आज पेड़ पौधों को अधिक ध्यान दिया करता हूँ। मेरे पास 317 प्रकार के औषधीय वृक्ष हैं, जैसे फनफना, नागेश्वर, पिंगू, सप्तपर्णी, जौठ, खैर, कंस, आंवला, पुत्रजीवक, रक्तचिता, सप्तपर्णी, गंधगोहिरा, सालपर्णी, कृष्णपर्णी, अग्निवंथ, स्वामी, चक्रकदम, गील, प्रासना, बिदारिकान, जीवंती, गुड़मरी, गुगुल, पाटली, चावथुआ, खीरीकोड़ी, चौड़ेगुड़ी, पितपापड़ा, ब्राह्मी, नीलभृंगराज, वन पिपला, दहदहिया, अशोका, रुद्राक्ष, पाताल गरुड़, नीलोत्पल, दंती, तिहुड़ी। इसके अलावा श्वेतक्रांति, सुगंधराज, गदपिपली, उम्मेई, ठेलको, गिरधनी, वाइडंका, गखुरा, बृहति, शतावरी, उलट कमल, बादीचांग, जयसंडा, शिकारी, इसको गन फ्लास कहते हैं, कुचिला, कताक, वेद आदि की सुरक्षा भी कर रहा हूँ। लेकिन कितने भी नष्ट हो जा रहे हैं, मेरे लिए असुविधा भी हो रही है। इसके अलावा उड़ीसा सरकार के वन विभाग मुझे उत्साहित करते आ रहे हैं। मुझे ऑनररी वाइल्ड लाइफ वार्डन के रूप में रखने के कारण पशु पक्षियों की सेवा और वन सुरक्षा की सेवा भी मिलते जा रहा है। मैं पेड़ पौधों के बारे में 8 प्रकार के किताब लिखकर लोगों को बांट चुका हूं और महिला संघ, युवक संघ, स्कूल, कॉलेज, एनजीओ, व्यक्तिगत संघ, सभा समिति में भी ट्रेनिंग दे रहा हूं। अपने घर में नर्सरी बनाकर चारा, बिहान आदि लोगों को बांट रहा हूं। मेरे जीवन काल में मैं करीब करीब 5 से 10 लाख तक चारा दे चुका हूं। वृक्षारोपण कराने के लिए सरकारी सुविधाएं मुझे मिलती आ रही हैं, फिर भी कुछ कमी है। आसपास के जितने जिले हैं, अनुगुल, भुवनेश्वर, बलांगीर, सुंदरगढ़, बनाई, पालहड़ा, केंदुझर आदि से भी लोग मेरे पास प्लांट लेने के लिए आते हैं। मैं पर्यावरण के लिए लोगों को सब कुछ जुटाते जा रहा हूं, फिर भी मुझे असुविधाएं कुछ हैं, जो ग्राइंडिंग करने के लिए मशीन, टैबलेटिंग मशीन, चूर्ण बनाने के लिए मशीन, जूस निकालने के मशीन आदि की जरूरत है। और मैं चाहता हूं अधिक चारा उत्पादन करने के लिए मेरे पास अधिक जमीन नहीं है। मैं मेरे लिए नहीं कहता हूं, देश के लिए, राज्य के लिए मैं जमीन की जरूरत चाहता हूं। तो यदि सुविधा हो सकेगी तो ये भी सरकार या वैज्ञानिक लोग मुझे सहायता दे सकते हैं। आज इंटरनेशनल बायोडाइवर्सिटी डे के अवसर पर बधाई के साथ अभिनंदन दे रहा हूं और मैं आशा करता हूं ये ज्ञान सिर्फ इंडिया में नहीं, सारे पृथ्वी में ये ज्ञान यदि वितरित हो जाएगा, लोग खुश होंगे और ये जो मेरी साधना है ये सारे संसार में पहुंच जाएगी। लोगों की सेवा करने के लिए मैं बाकी जीवन, अवसर जीवन बिताते रहूंगा। धन्यवाद के साथ। धन्यवाद
साहब, आपकी टॉक बहुत इंफॉर्मेटिव थी। आप अपने आप में एक बहुत बड़ा बायो रिसोर्सेस की धरोहर है। इसके बाद हम जाएंगे नॉर्थ ईस्ट इंडिया, जिसमें मिस्टर ब्ला,
यस सर,
रिभोई डिस्ट्रिक्ट से है। He will present his views. Mr. Bla.
Yes, good afternoon to you all. I am Mr. M.B. Bla from Rivoy district of Meghalaya, residing in village Bhoirambam. First of all, I would like to thank ICAR NBPGR for selecting me as one of the farmers to share my experience on conservation of crop diversity. I've been into farming for more than 25 years. I cultivate about around 20 different crops in my field, which include maize, popcorn, yellow maize, and red maize, bottle gourd, yard long bean, chili, brinjal, cucumber, ginger, turmeric, watermelon, pumpkin, elongated, round and oval variety, spongy, gourd, rich gourd. Beside the field crops, I also have an orchard of fruits crops such as pears, sweet orange, black mulberry, banana, papaya, lychee, and few minor fruit crops. Cultivation of this agro-horticultural crop has provided to us as not only with source of nutritional requirement to our family, but it has also led us to livelihood sustenance by sale of this produce. Most of the field crops and vegetables crop that I cultivate is of local varieties, and I find it very important and realize over time, tested field experience, that there is an urgent felt of need and importance to conserve the local varieties. Over the last many years, I have been observing that many of the local varieties of these various crops have been disappeared from cultivation. Now we have to conserve, to safeguard our local varieties, such as Minri variety of rice, Kaja banana, Lakadang turmeric, Queen pineapple, Nadia ginger. Then myself and my family thought of cultivating these local varieties of various crops. In general, farmers of Meghalaya prefer to grow local varieties since Meghalaya is going to be declared as an organic state. Therefore, it's obvious that farmers go for local varieties. Growing diverse crop is important because because instead of depending on hybrid and company seed, it's better to cultivate our local varieties. They are well adapted to local climatic conditions and require less input compared to hybrids. When I grow local varieties in smaller area, it is profitable. It's difficult to produce them in large quantities because I find it difficult to sell the crops with higher price. Apart from me, many of my neighboring farmers in this region also conserve and maintain local varieties with small number of collection due to limitation of land holdings. Local varieties are more reliable in terms of germination, ease of cultivation, cultivation, less fertilizer, no chemical control is required. If you grow a great number of crops, it will protect from losses than growing single crop. I firmly have a conviction that my effort as a good stewardship of maintaining and conserving this local germplasm would surely come as a source of useful plant material either directly to my neighbor practicing farmers and also for our country plant scientists to improve the yield by research over years. I am grateful to the team of scientists from NBPGR for visiting my farm, encouraging me and making me more aware of the importance of local plant genetic resources, of which I believe that I would come as an involvement to contribute in the near future for the cause of society and serving the good of mankind. Last but not the least, with all the inspired motivation and encouragement by the scientists, without denial of my genuine shyness, I would also like to further encourage the team of scientists to visit my farm to send me an update with recent technology of conservation practices, which I will be very grateful to accept and practice. I'm interested to try other different varieties which are suitable to our soil and climatic condition. I'm willing to multiply seed for NBPGR from other parts of Northeast region. If support is given, thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
your field is very rich in almost every crop, 20-25 crops we are growing, which must
Yes.
be fulfilling your nutritional requirement of your family. You have just reiterated emphatically what Danny has presented few minutes back or just half an hour before. So thank you very much. Since we are running short of time, we may take only one or maximum two questions in this session, and I'll hand over it to Sherry then.
Question.
Sir, you are muted, Dr. Mahopatra.
The host has muted me. So we can take one question because we are running short of time, or maximum two. So it is open for discussion for the audience and the viewers to put their question.
People are sending notes in the chat box, not questions. They are full of appreciations to the farmers and how much we have to learn from them. So one can see the chat box.
Yeah, they are very informative.
No question. Yeah, Dr. A.K. Singh is
whether can we do some organized efforts to quantify the ecosystem services which are being offered by these great conservators? And that would require a great efforts and systematic efforts also to support them in their efforts generating resources and other things. This is one, just not a question really, but one suggestion. Some systematic studies on ecosystem services offered by these conservators should be done and quantified by some economists or the relevant people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Just for the information, I may inform to everybody that the ecosystem services of all the genetic resources as well as the natural resources, soil and water, it has been taken up recently by the Asia Research Complex, Badapani. So I hope NBPGR can also take up such programs in future.
Sir, may I reply, sir? Dr. Alawat.
नहीं सब नहीं इस वक्त नहीं
सर बायोडाइवर्सिटी मिशन प्रोजेक्ट में वो टेकन केयर हो रहा है बायोडाइवर्सिटी मिशन
as a suggestion we have made a note of it and we will act upon that.
Thank you. Now I think I can hand over the session to Seri. Seri, please go on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Mahapatra. I think those 30 minutes were in fact the true essence of our celebration today. Now, in order to further highlight the importance of biodiversity, especially land races, we have with us Dr. J.C. Rana, who is the National Coordinator of the UN Environment JEF project. And he was also a part of the NBPGR family with several years of experience in PGR management. Now, Dr. Rana is invited to speak on rematriation of land races, his JEF experiences in the Indian context. Rana.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sari. I would like to off my video to improve the echo. Good afternoon to all and namaskar. Most respected Dr. Trilochan Mahapatra, Secretary Dear and Director General ICAR, and Chief Guest of today's function, Dr. T.R. Sharma, Deputy Director General Crops, ICAR, Dr. Danny Hunter, Global Project Coordinator and Senior Scientist at the Alliance, Dr. Kuldeep Singh, Director NBPGR, Dr. Sudhir Alabat, Convener of the program, all the invited dignitaries, including Dr. Gautam, Dr. Dilosab, and many others that I can see, guest colleagues from ICR, NBPGR, NARS, and CG institutions, farmers, students, ladies and gentlemen. I, on my behalf and on the behalf of the Alliance of Biodiversity International and CEAT, convey my greetings to you all for celebrating International Day for Biological Diversity. I also express my gratitude and sincere thanks to Dr. Kuldeep Singh for allowing us to join hands in today's celebration. After hearing from Danny, from his very comprehensive talk on how we can use our agrobiodiversity for finding nature-based solutions, and also from our farmer friends and how they are at their individual or collective level contributing in the conservation and use of biodiversity. Friends, I must share with you that while working very closely with farmers for the last almost 4 and 5 years across India and globally, I have seen many farmers and farmer groups and communities who are conserving biodiversity whatsoever they have with them very systematically without any vested interest or expecting any remuneration or rewards from any. Therefore, we recognize their efforts and enthusiasm, probably as they understand nature much better than many of us living in the cities. Friends, we agree that we have evidences now that global agriculture is facing enormous challenges with climate change, overall degradation of soils, ecosystem, or water deficit, and overall nutrition and health decline of the humanity in general. Therefore, I personally feel that the theme of today's 2021 International Biodiversity Day, that we are the part of solution hashtag for nature, is very appropriate, most appropriate. It's not that we are not unaware or not understand that solution lies in our hands, but we need to come together wholeheartedly to find those solutions. Otherwise, we also need to go to that Mother Nature has its own way of working, and probably if you realize in the last 2 years, the beginning has been made under the pandemic. Friends, coming to my talk, rematriation of land bases. Rematriation means that whatsoever we have taken from the Mother Earth, let's plow back that again to Mother Earth. And we at the Alliance, jointly with ICAR and NBPGR, and also with other partners from the SAUs, NGOs, have initiated this task under one of our UN JEF project. And also we are making it a part of a new work plan with ICAR at different parts of the country. To recollect from my past, I must mention that we initiated this work when we were working in the NAIP project with NBPGR. We took 46 rice land races of rice for working in Chamba site, and we tested those in Kangra and Chamba district, and also at the Malan Center. So we come across that there were 3 land races that were rematriated from gene bank, but performed very well and found resistant to rice blast, and we could successfully maintain those land races. So carrying that experience, when we started working in JEF project with ICAR and NBPGR and other partners, we organized many focal discussion, group discussion. That approach we follow generally, involving more than 300 farmers across age and gender, using 4-cell analysis approach, and that we have designed at Biodiversity. And we found that many of the farmers, they mentioned many of the native variety which are very, very special attributes, but somehow they have lost those, and therefore they requested many that if we can bring those and plow them back in the cultivation. So as a first step, we document whatsoever was available there, and at the same time, our colleagues from NBPGR mine the gene bank to find out whatever has been collected from those areas and available in the gene bank. Friends, it is a paucity of time. I will not go into details, but to summarize, so far, we have taken out almost 3,000 native varieties of 20 crops and have been tested at farmers' field using our try-go-out, what we call seed for need approach, involving around 10,000 farmers at different capacities, including communities, FPO, self-help group, and individual. As of now, we have identified more than 150 native varieties. Each one of them carries one or two special attributes. And we are almost in the midway of the project, and in few crops, we have successfully developed a complete value chain, including strengthening the local seed system, ensuring availability and accessibility to quality seeds of those native varieties through establishing community seed banks. Finally, I wish to share with most appropriate authorities of ICR present here, DGZ Hub, and also direct NBPGR, that at the end of the day, we shall be reaching around more than 25,000 farmers, bringing area to the tune of around 1 lakh hectares under native varieties of 20 crops in different regions of the country. Survey says that through this endeavor with ICR and NBPGR and other NRS partners, we shall be able to find the solution, as the theme of the international bodies to say that we may be addressing some of the issues like reducing climate vulnerability by providing wider choice of varieties and availability and access to their seeds through community seed banks. We are also doing a lot of nutritional profiling, so we are going for better nutrition, and nutrition dense varieties can be plowbacks for cultivation. We are also ensuring better income, as mentioned by many of the farmers, that they are getting much better price for their land races or the native varieties. So we are trying to ensure livelihoods and owing to their special attributes such as quality, taste, and also very high social and local adaptability and accessibility, in return providing a lot of health benefit to the humanities in general. And now probably, as mentioned by Danny and many of the farmers, that we have evidences to show that, yes, we do have that database evidences to prove that. And also what mentioned by Dr. A.K. Singh very recently, that improved ecosystem services, many of these native land races and varieties, they perform very well under organic environments where you need a very low inputs, thereby reducing the load of pesticides, fertilizers, and other sources such as water and etc. So, sir, at the end, I must say that since time has come that today, in today's context, projects that manage, project and restore ecosystem services are being widely viewed as win-win strategies for addressing majority of the challenges that we discussed. And decision makers urgently need to know what role do nature-based solutions have in the race to address these challenges on time. So with this, I close my short talk, and I hope if there is any question, we will be happy to answer, or you can send in the chat at what we're doing. So this is how we are trying to mainstream native diversity of different crops at different regions. Thank you once again for providing this opportunity. Thank you one and all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, as a prelude to our today's celebration, we had an in-house declamation contest conducted yesterday. And now may I invite one of the judges of the contest, Dr. K. Haridasan, who is a consultant with the Ahalya Foundation in Kerala. He is also a pioneer in the field of medicinal plant research and has authored a book on the extensive flora of Meghalaya state. So Dr. K. Haridasan is kindly invited to give his views and remarks on the declamation contest conducted yesterday.
So good afternoon and greeting. Hello, can you hear?
Yes, please go ahead, sir.
Okay. 1 second, I just would like to share a presentation. Is it visible, sir?
No, we are looking at the desktop, your desktop.
The presentation is not there.
No, not it.
Share.
Haridasan, you may speak.
Yes, sir. I think Dr. Alawat can give a presentation. I will speak, definitely.
But you may speak orally as well.
Okay, sir. So, sir, yesterday we had a very informative and interesting declamation on indigenous plant wealth for food, nutrition, and health security, occasion of International Biological Diversity, organized by PGR discipline ICIR, NBPGR. And
Sir, would you like to show it on a presentation mode, please?
Yes, it would be nice. It would be nice.
Yes, just click on that presentation mode, right side, sir.
I am unable to.
Yes, yes.
It is there, sir?
Not yet.
Still, you have not clicked, sir. You please click it.
Yeah, please click on that. Yes, this is fine. Fantastic, sir.
It has come. Okay, thank you very much. I am sorry for the trouble in that. And in fact, in that declamation, there were 7 contestants. As you can see, 4 of them girls and 3 boys. Of that, 4 are PhD students and 3 are MSc students. We had the judges, that is Dr. Manivel, Dr. S.P. Alawat, and myself. I am now speaking on the view of the judges on the declamation. Found that the coverage the 7 contestants made was all the regions of India was covered: Western Ghats, Eastern Ghats, Northeast, Northwest Himalaya, and more. And in fact, the altitude wise, if we take, it was from sea coast to temperate zones of Himalaya were described. Species coverage, they were mostly medicinal. Of course, there are few food and nutrition plants. And of course, there altogether 15 species were discussed, giving their plant biology, biochemistry, activity on human health, cultivation prospects, and conservation issues. 15 plants belongs to 10 herbs, 2 climbers, 2 trees, and 1 fungus. Ashwagandha, Kalmeg, Moringa, Iris, Dinospora, Artemisia, Garcinia. I'm glad that the healer from Orissa was mentioning many of these things. And this indicates the priority nature of the species for the current scenario. When I talk about the presentation, in fact, they were all superior in content. All of them tried to connect to the COVID pandemic and fully information loaded every screen. Their presentations fulfilled all criteria evolution that we made on content, presentation, and communication skills, time management, audience, etc. That has given us a little bit problem also, or it's a task, because to find out all of them are high standard, to find out the top 3 is a task. In fact, we arrived at unanimous decision and 3 of them were selected, but others also had an equally good presentation and need appreciation for presentation in short time and highlight their finding effectively. Needless to mention the event, we enjoyed the 2 hours that we spent with them, listening, interacting, and discussing. It gave us and others who participated opportunity to understand their respective resource features, and we all learned from each other. As our director, Dr. Kuldeep Singh mentioned, it gave us also an opportunity to retrospect and improve upon. May I bestow them the best wishes for a bright academic and research career ahead. As I leave, let me also point out some points that emerged based on the presentations. There were questions from the audience confirming the identity, often confusing. Many of them were asking what sort of Momordica, what is the Dinospora species and all that, which indicate that we need to have a skill updating on taxonomic matters at that local level. And then there were also issues on distribution assessment. There are problems, or some people, tropical plant finding it in a temperate region and things like that. This could be resolved through adequate field survey. We need to give a stress on that. And access to information, that is access to authentic information and material sharing, could certainly do a lot for this research. Cultivation vs. wild was a repeated point that emerged. And we need to analyze which is the best, as we know that most of the plants were cultivated, harvested from wild, and we need to analyze which should be the best ecosystem specific one that we need to adopt. the impact on threat assessment was also there. Many people mentioned that there is a need for conservation and all that. For that, we may opt for threat assessment, perhaps the rapid threat assessment, and adopt a strategy for conservation through an informed decision. I really appreciate the the NBPGR for such an inclusive event that they organize with the students, the participants of other stakeholders, and this will contribute favorably to the sector. May I thank the NBPGR for organizing this program very well, and especially Dr. Veena Gupta, Dr. S.P. Halawat, Dr. Manivel, and Monica Jaya, and all those involved. I am confident that these youngsters with us, they will take forward the mission forward. Whatever we heard, that will materialize in near future. Thank you all. Hello, thank you.
Now the winners of the competition will be announced by Dr. Veena Gupta, Professor PGR and Head Conservation Division. Veena, ma'am, please.
Audio.
Yes, thank you, Shari, and good evening to all. Now, in continuation to the comments given by one of the judges and the results which were in compliance with the other judge, Dr. Manival, the medicinal plant man, the students out of 7 students who participated, sorry, I have not made the... So, these 5 students, they participated. The program was well attended, and the results are that the third prize or the third position goes to Miss Nitika Kalia, who was from Chamba district, and she spoke about Tinospora giloi and Morchella esculenta, giving example of a farmer from her area, Mr. Chandel, who was also a Plant Genome Savior awardee. Second prize goes to Mr. Siddhant Ranjan Padi, again a PhD student, who covered the Northeast region, especially the Meghalaya region, and the plant was Artemisia annua. And the first prize goes to our MSc student, very enthusiastic, and Mr. Latif Bashir. He explained everything and answered every question with great confidence. And he spoke about the Jammu Kashmir region medicinal plant wealth on Iris kashmiriana and Asphoetida, the species which was introduced with the help of NBPGR, and it was now under cultivation with IHBT Palampur. So these are the results. Thank you very much. Thanks to all who have participated, and thanks to Director Sir for giving me this opportunity to present this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am, and congratulations to all winners. Yeah, we are honored to have among us Dr. T.R. Sharma, our Deputy Director General Crop Science, who's in fact leading our efforts in PGR management at ICR. Sir, I request you to kindly address the gathering and to give your remarks.
Honorable Dr. T. Mahopatra, Secretary DARE and DG ICAR, as well as Chief Guest of the Day, Dr. P.L. Gautam, former Chairman PPVFRA and former Director NBPGR, Dr. B.S. Dillon, Vice Chancellor PAU, as well as former Director NBPGR, other directors of NBPGR, former directors of NBPGR, Dr. Danny Hunter, speakers of the day, my DDG colleagues, Dr. Kuldeep Singh, Director NBPGR, Dr. A.K. Singh, Director IARI, Dr. J.C. Rana, National Coordinator, Biodiversity International, different director of different ICR institutes, vice chancellors of different universities, participants, farmers, students, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to extend my heartiest congratulations and greetings to all on this occasion of the International Day for Biological Diversity, which is being organized at the basis of Bharat Ka Amrit Mahotsav, commemorating 75th years of India's independence. It's indeed a great occasion to be here this afternoon, and we all know that every year on 22nd May, the International Day for Biological Diversity is observed globally to create awareness among the masses to protect the biological resources and the global biodiversity which shapes our environment. But the data shows that gradual degradation of biodiversity, provoking us to take prompt action to stop this for the good health of nature and welfare of human beings. As per the UN estimates, 3/4 of the Earth's land-based environment and about 66% of the marine environment have been altered by human activity. The latest report submitted by the International Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services states that more than 1 million animal and plant species are at risk of extinction. Moreover, presently we are facing outbreak of pandemic COVID-19 that forces us to reconsider the protective role of biodiversity had played in saving the humankind, since its many advantages resulted in one fundamental benefit, that is the protection from infectious diseases. It's all because of genetic diversity that we have varied degree of infection of COVID-19. Many evidences have suggested that due to loss of biodiversity, several severe diseases have been transmitted from animal to humans. And in fact, 70% of emerging infectious diseases in recent years have stemmed from such transmissions. Now, the time has come to realize that we are the part of solution and can only stop the damage that we are causing to the nature and to the biodiversity. For ensuring food and livelihood security, sustainable management of genetic resources are very, very important for food and agriculture, which shall always remain as a priority. Of the about 3 lakh species of higher plants, only about 7,000 species have been domesticated and cultivated by humans for the millennia. Today, 90% of our plant-based calories is supplied by a mere 30 plant species. A large number of local cultivars and land races are facing the challenge of genetic erosion due to their replacement by introduction of high-yielding improved varieties, which is in turn has intensified the emergence of new pests and diseases in agriculture production system. The classical example of this genetic uniformity and genetic vulnerability is that of Irish potato famine of 1845, which was termed as vertifolia effect because of the susceptibility of one genotype, vertifolia, to Phytophthora infestans. Various epidemics of plant diseases have occurred in India before independence on wheat rust, since before the diversification of wheat lines and introduction of different resistance genes in wheat cultivars, which we are deploying across the country. Therefore, to avoid genetic uniformity, we have to diversify our crops, and in that sense, role of local land races is very, very important, which was very aptly highlighted by the farmers participated in this particular event. It was an eye-opener that these farmers are struggling hard to protect the nature environment as well as biodiversity. Though the number of cultivated plants is relatively small and seemingly insignificant, but nature has evolved an extraordinary intraspecific genetic diversity in crop plants and their wild relatives. In ICAR, National Bureau of Plant Genetic Resources, which is a nodal organization of overall management of plant genetic resources in country, has conserved so far more than 4.5 lakh accessions of different crops in the National Gene Bank. Similarly, our 3 bureaus, of animal genetic resources, fish genetic resources, and microbial as well as insect genetic resources, all these 4 bureaus are playing very, very important to conserve the diversity of domain-specific organisms. Not only the conservation by the ICAR and NBPGR has a major mandate, but the germplasm characterization and trait discovery is another important component and part of NBPGR, which it is playing very aptly and efficiently. In recent years, the major focus has been on identification of germplasm with high nutritional value and resistance to biotic and abiotic stresses. To cite a few examples, a lentil germplasm line IC208329 with 27.4% protein and horse gram line IC212722 with 35% protein, and many other examples of many plant species with high protein as well as amino acids, anthocyanin contents, and all essential amino acids are present in all these underutilized species. As of now, more than 1,733 trait-specific genetic stocks have also been registered in different crops. Currently, there are 5 mega mission mode projects which are being run at NBPGR to characterize genetic variability and complete germplasm of wheat, rice, chickpea, 6 major oilseed crops, and 6 minor pulses, and all these are being phenotyped at multi-locations for different agronomical traits, as well as being genotyped by high throughput genomic technologies to identify new genes and alleles for different traits. These are currently the largest projects anywhere in the world which are being run on characterization of germplasm of different plant species. I can also mention here that we are running an All India Network project on potential crops with 15 crop species, which is being run throughout the country. And out of those 15 from this particular project, 2 have already been mainstreamed for cultivation, like rice bean and amaranthus. Similarly, another CRP project on agrobiodiversity is playing a very important role in utilization of different wild species and other land races in pre-breeding and breeding components to introgress genes for different traits, particularly nutrients and also biotic and abiotic stress management. We know that the food system in the country from Kashmir to Kanyakumari to Assam to Gujarat, it's a highly diverse, and therefore a role of these local land races and underutilized crop species is very, very important for nutritional security of the country. In the long run, we should put our efforts in creating healthy surrounding and functional and species-rich ecosystem by applying our scientific skills for our suitability and survival. Hence, we must be part of the solution and not for the nature, which is very useful for the nature. At the end, I wish for safe health to all, including your family members, and believe that together we can make Mother Earth better for living. And with these few words, I would like to stop here. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, sir. We take this opportunity to extend our heartfelt gratitude for your continued support for the cause of PGR, sir. Now, let me join each one of you in welcoming our Honorable Director General, Dr. T. Mahapatra, for delivering the Chief Guest Address.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dr. P.L. Gautam and Dr. B.S. Dillon and many other senior colleagues who have joined this program. Dr. T.R. Sharma, DDG Crop Sciences. Maybe some Honorable Vice Chancellors are also here. Dr. Kuldeep Singh, Dr. A.K. Singh, Dr. Rana, and colleagues from NBPGR, and many participants joining today's program. And also today's speaker, Dr. Danny Hunter, though he has left the program. Let me, on my own behalf, congratulate all of you, and very specifically my farmer friends, and those who made their own presentations, and also students who participated in the competition, declamation competition, and scored well. So congratulations to all of you. Today is the day to celebrate and celebrate our rich biological diversity. And it is a happy occasion that we have the NBPGR at the forefront of the program, organizing this particular program on biological diversity. And also that too in the presence of the stalwarts like Dr. P.L. Gautam and Dr. B.S. Dillon, who have been at the forefront of guiding this country, as well as at the global level, the biological diversity programs. And today, their presence signifies how much of importance they attach to the whole issue of biological diversity and the kind of concepts, programs, schemes, all that which were spoken about, associated with biological diversity. So thanks to Dr. Kuldeep Singh for organizing this. Many things have been spoken. It has been a very long program. It's going to be 4 o'clock already. Already it is 4 o'clock. And, we have started the program at 1:30. And there may not be actually patience to really continue this program for a long period. And rather we should not. And I would be rather very brief. Number one, that International Biological Diversity Day 2021 has a sub-theme and a core message, and that is we are part of the solution. इस संदर्भ में मैं ये मेरे जो किसान मित्रों हैं आज अपना प्रेजेंटेशन दिए हैं, आप सबको मैं धन्यवाद दूंगा, कृतज्ञता ज्ञापन करना चाहूँगा, आप सबको आभार व्यक्त करना चाहूँगा कि आप लोगों ने इतना मेहनत करते हैं ये जैव विविधता को इकट्ठी करते हुए इसको संरक्षण इसका करना और संवर्धन में भाग लेना और आवश्यकता के मुताबिक लोगों के बीच में पहुंचाना, उसका औषधीय गुण का व्यवहार करना और विशेष रूप में रोपण सामग्री बाकी किसानों को देना। मेरे जो किसान मित्र आज ये गोपाल मेहता जी हो या साहू जी हो, डोंग जी हो, तायल जी हो, बाकी जो भी हमारे किसान मित्र यहाँ आज उपस्थित हैं और हमारे बीच में जो उपस्थापना किए हैं, अपना तजुर्बा हमारे सामने रखे हैं, NBPGR को मैं धन्यवाद दूंगा। किसान मित्रों को आज इस कार्यक्रम के अंतर्भुक्त करने के लिए और उनका जो एक्सपीरियंस है उस हमारे सामने रखने के लिए बहुत सारे चीज सीखने के लिए मिला है। ये उनका जो उपस्थापना हमारे सामने रहा, उसका मैसेज ही था, एसेंस ही था कि वी आर पार्ट ऑफ सॉल्यूशन। सारे किसान मित्रों ने ये हमारे सामने रखा। हम तो सुनते हैं, बहुत कम करते हैं, लेकिन ये खुद अपने हाथों से, अपने पैसा खर्च कर, अपना समय देकर ये कर रहे हैं और वो बता दिया कि कैसे हम लोग सॉल्यूशन का हिस्सा बन सकते हैं और जैव विविधता का संरक्षण करना, संवर्धन करना और सुचारू रूप से उसका इस्तेमाल करना किस तरीके से संभव हो सकता है, उसके बारे में उन्होंने बताया। और ये ज्वलंत उदाहरण उन लोग हमारे सामने हैं और इनका सही ढंग से डॉक्यूमेंटेशन उनका काम का हो, लिपिबद्ध हो, और ताकि इन लोगों ने, किसान भाइयों ने दूसरे के लिए मिसाल बने, उदाहरण बने और पूरा देश में प्रचार प्रसार भी हो। ये डॉक्टर कुलदीप सिंह साहब आज के दिन हमारे लिए, भारतीय कृषि अनुसंधान परिषद और NBPGR के लिए ये पहला कर्तव्य होना चाहिए कि इनके सारे जो काम ये कर रहे हैं जैव विविधता संबंधित, इसका संकलन होना चाहिए, डॉक्यूमेंटेशन होना चाहिए और उसका प्रचार प्रसार भी होना चाहिए। ये हमारा दायित्व है और हमें करना चाहिए। और ये लोग कैसे पार्ट ऑफ सॉल्यूशन बने हुए हैं ऑलरेडी, और जो थीम है इंटरनेशनल डे का, वो ऑलरेडी ये सार्थक कर चुके हैं। और इसको कैसे बढ़ावा दिया जाए, जैसे अवेयरनेस की बात डॉक्टर डैनी हंटर साहब बता रहे थे कि उसको अवेयरनेस बढ़ाने के लिए दूसरे किसान भाइयों को, बहनों को प्रेरित करने के लिए इसी दिशा में क्या किया जाए। प्रश्न उठता है कि उसमें उनको फायदा कितना मिलता है, क्या इकोनॉमिक बेनिफिट उनको मिलता है। जब उनको डॉक्यूमेंट करेंगे, इसका इकोनॉमिक एनालिसिस करेंगे और इसका घाटा क्या है, सौदा घाटे की है या फायदे की है, उसका पता चलेगा, तब जाके हम इसका सही कार्यक्रम इसका तय कर सकते हैं। फिर भी मेरा सुझाव ये रहेगा डॉक्टर कुलदीप सिंह, खाली डॉक्यूमेंटेशन नहीं, एक नेटवर्क बनाया जाए, फार्मर्स प्लांट जर्म प्लाज्म कंजर्वेशन नेटवर्क के रूप में, कि ताकि ये जितने इस तरह के काम कर रहे हैं हम उनको इकट्ठी कर सकते हैं और उनका समस्या जो भी है, जैसे कुछ किसान भाई अपने समस्या बता रहे थे, उसका समस्या का हल कैसे हम दे सकते हैं अपने जो लिमिटेड रिसोर्स है उसके तहत हो या दूसरे रिसोर्सेज से कहीं अगर हम उनको कुछ सहायता दिला सकते हैं, तो ताकि इनका जो भी समस्या है उसका हल हो और ये और उसमें उत्साहित हो, प्रेरित हो अपने काम में आगे बढ़ने के लिए। ये एक हमारे लिए एक 2 एक्शन पॉइंट आज के बना ताकि NBPGR जो है इस दिशा में काम करे। और वी आर पार्ट ऑफ सॉल्यूशन वहीं समाप्त नहीं होता है कि वी आर पार्ट ऑफ सॉल्यूशन, कई दिशा में हमें कदम उठाना होगा और मैं संक्षिप्त में बता के समाप्त करना चाहूँगा। विस्तारित रूप से अलग से चर्चा करेंगे इसके बारे में। सारे किसान मित्रों को मैं धन्यवाद देता हूं और मैं फिर अंग्रेजी में बोलना शुरू करता हूं बाकी सबके लिए. So today's the program was beautifully done, and I must appreciate this, and particularly the lecture in the context of India's Amrit Mahotsav, 75 years of India's independence, that we have planned 75 weeks of activity prior to August 2022. And in these 75 weeks, we are organizing lectures every week. We are organizing awareness campaigns every week on various issues. And today, being the relevant day for us, International Day for Biological Diversity. So we have this lecture, and thanks to Dr. Kuldeep Singh for organizing this. And I believe Dr. R.C. Agarwal is also here, who is actually spearheading this whole lecture series, in different weeks on various topics. So thanks, Dr. Agarwal, for planning this out and also taking this forward. And today we heard the lecture of Dr. Danny Hunter. In fact, I learned about this being part of this program, Alliance Board, being part of Alliance Board. In fact, when I joined this board as a member, I knew their program on biodiversity for food and nutrition. And in fact, on several occasions, I have discussed with Dr. Kuldeep Singh and also with Dr. Rana on how do we actually mainstream, particularly the underutilized crops, for nutrition. In fact, Dr. Braulio, who is also a member of the Biodiversity Shiat Alliance Board, I had one-to-one interaction, and he in fact explained to me and how well they have characterized those species. What was mentioned by Dr. Danny Hunter. That not only that they have characterized the species, for various traits like, as it was said, for vitamin C or vitamin A, and so on and so forth in Brazil, but various other traits, and the kind of documentation they have done. And I have been mentioning this repeatedly and for past 3 years. And we have initiated little, but I believe we could have done much better. And this is high time. Dr. Kuldeep Singh, probably you don't have much time, but I believe NBPGR, whosoever is there, must initiate immediately, this program. We always say there is dearth of money. You don't require much money to really, characterize all this. In-house resources are quite good enough to really do this, and we can really stop other works and then do this and prioritize as our main work. And so I believe that instead of getting fascinated by all new science, and I have been telling this for 5 years, that we get easily fascinated by the new developments, modern tools, but the old classical work of characterization, evaluation, and understanding germplasm, discovering traits, do not get as much emphasis and focus as they should, and that would have been in the past. And we would have been the leaders. The examples of Brazil and a few others are cited. Maybe India as example would have been cited at the global level by now, but we are lagging behind. And that is where it becomes painful, that despite repeated efforts and emphasis, we don't really pick up those to move faster. So today is the day to actually revisit and rethink, redesign, re-strategize, revisit our strategies, and move faster in those directions, so that the local germplasm resources not only are promoted with regard to their conservation, but also trade discovery through evaluation, appropriate evaluation for food and nutrition, and for various other uses, whether in the context of climate change or in the context of corona, particularly the health benefits that some of these plants do offer. And also various other points, for instance, whether it is fuel wood, whether it is energy or timber or whatever. And I believe that ultimately, even in India's context, what is important is exploring the biodiversity for livelihood security. And if there could be a school program, and the farmers, the small and marginal farmers, are linked to the school programs, midday meal programs, or other programs of the government, and there could be immense benefits with regard to livelihoods, getting ensured in the process. In the context of climate change, also we have so much to do, but I'll not really elaborate on each one of those. But I believe that there is a strong need to have a kind of in-house, brainstorming, Dr. Kuldeep Singh, within ICR. When it's in-house, it doesn't mean only NBPGR. In-house means within ICR, National Agriculture Research System, that how best we mainstream the germplasm, plant genetic resources, not just conservation, but with regard to other aspects I talked about. When I say so, because rightly we have chosen farmers from these biodiversity hotspots of the country. You know that among the 35 global biodiversity hotspots, India has 4 of them. And we have farmers from these hotspots speaking about conservation, in situ, on-farm conservation of biodiversity. And what could be a better tribute to our farmers today, that bringing them to this platform, listening to them, and their experiences, about conservation of biodiversity, and being part of the solution, as I said earlier. So that is what is very, very important. And more importantly, the IUCN 2019 includes 176 species of India as in the red list as endangered. And identifying those and conserving those ex situ, in situ, and all efforts directed in that direction. And I believe we have to have very specific action plan and specific mission on this, that what is that exactly we can deliver by August 2022 in this 1 year time, approximately a little more than 1 year time, that delivering on the endangered species or threatened species. How the Bureau and other institutions can come together, and then help in this direction. Certainly, as Danny presented, biodiversity for food and nutrition is important. There are several lessons to learn from his presentation. I was telling that I knew about this, and I have been emphasizing on this for quite some time. And we have quite a bit to learn, whether with regard to generating evidence that they do have that kind of health benefits, and not just discovering a kind of biomolecule in this or quantifying those, but developing evidences with regard to their health benefits. So I believe that that is a very, very important component which we have to build. And that could be our first important activity. And the second important point, as it was rightly said, that how do we actually contribute to policy formulations, keeping in view the advantages, whether with regard to conservation or with regard to their utilization. So I believe, Dr. Kuldeep Singh, before you leave the screen, and as long as you are around, kindly look into this, and how do we really influence the policy making with regard to underutilized crops, or with regard to mainstreaming these crops in the food system, in the diversified food system, as you rightly said, that the culinary diversity has got reduced over years, and how do we really further improve it? And finally, creating awareness. I have been talking about it, Dr. Kuldeep Singh, if you remember, that how do we really promote in schools these diversity gardens and nutri gardens, and then promoting, going to the schools and then delivering lectures, and particularly requesting our stalwarts to actually help us out in the schools, so that school children are enthused, are inspired to not only learn about the biodiversity, the richness of it, but multifarious uses of biodiversity, and as a future legacy that we are leaving behind for them and for all future generations. And the essence of that they need to really understand. And how do we really do this? And I did mention that in batches, inviting school children and exposing them in small groups, in various forms, whether it is competition of debates and painting or whatever, various competitions, or even engaging them in understanding, diversity, whether it is medicinal plants or even agroforestry species or horticultural species, and so on and so forth. So, and then various activities planned based on the behavior of various plants, whether it is medicinal properties or antioxidant properties, or so on and so forth. So I believe that we have very big responsibility, and if we plan our activity, and all scientists, to start with NBPGR, and I believe that can be expanded to other bureaus, that every scientist could be given a small responsibility to perform, and obviously he or she would be able to devote that much of time, which may be 10 days, 15 days in a year, or a month in a year would not be a big thing. And that way we can actually reach the whole country and creating awareness, informing and educating public at large, and informing and educating the policymakers, the administrators, and everybody. That is so crucial. And I strongly believe that in the process we can build confidence, in the system as well in the process. So today's presentation by Danny and the presentation by the farmers, they're all eye openers. And I'm sure, there is plenty of lessons for all of us to learn. And one can keep, discussing and deliberating on small points, and then, all that. But how do we really build our program? As Danny said, that he is ready to help us out. How do we really build a program on biodiversity for food and nutrition, and particularly, our underutilized crops? And in fact, in that context, when I was the president of the Indian Society of Genetics and Plant Breeding, I had a small mini symposium at TNAU on this aspect. There are several messages. I do not know what the society is doing on the proceedings. Good recommendations emerge out of it. And they're all lessons for everybody, for all the universities, for all the institutions. There are lessons. And, so I don't know, how far we take these points seriously. I have spoken several points today, and I keep speaking those, but how seriously they are noted, and how many action points are translated into real actions. And if we can do, we can transform. And in the past 5 years, I have been talking about various facets of biodiversity and defining action points, but very little actions have been translated into reality. So without talking more, so I would like to stop here and learn from global experiences. And we can several kind of e-learning materials is available. Danny said is available. And in fact, Dr. Braulio, whom I contacted, Brazil, who has his own experience of working at the ground level. In fact, I have already told Dr. Kuldeep Singh to invite him for a lecture. And so these are the kind of things I believe today is the day to remember, to reinvigorate ourselves, to move much faster in the direction of addressing all issues concerning biological diversity. It's not just changing the act. We have done quite a bit of discussion. How do we change the act, rules, guidelines to promote use, conservation, as well as use of biodiversity and sharing of biological resources? But that we have done, Dr. Kuldeep Singh, and but many more things to be done. So with these words, I congratulate you. I congratulate all your colleagues who have contributed for the success of today's program. First of all, planning such program, thinking about it is praiseworthy. So I appreciate your effort and thank you very much profusely for doing this. And my colleague, Dr. T.R. Sharma, has elaborately spoken about various facets of biological diversity. And, you must have noted them. And so those action points should also be taken into account. And we could have heard our stalwarts, Dr. Gautam, Dr. Dillon. Today, your program didn't have scope for that, but you could have at least listened to them, maybe 5 minutes each in the beginning. It would have been very helpful. But otherwise, it's a very long program, and we certainly, in another day, let us plan and note down some action points. And we will have their guidance, and other stalwarts in the field will have their guidance to move forward. So with these words, I stop here, and thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this program. Thank you very much, and wish you all the very best.
Thank you very much, sir. It has always been a privilege to learn from you, and your presence and vision has set higher benchmarks, which we will definitely aim to achieve. Thank you very much, sir. Now, to conclude the session, I request Dr. Kavita Gupta, Principal Scientist and in charge PME Cell, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Sherry. It is my privilege to propose the vote of thanks. A very good afternoon to all. I have been assigned this very pleasant task of proposing the vote of thanks today. First of all, we wish to express our gratitude to the Honorable Dr. T. Mahapatra, the Secretary DARE and DG ICAR, for chairing today's function. Thank you very much, sir, for your kind support, your inspiring words, and also bringing out so many action points. I assure you, sir, we will certainly take up those. We also thank Dr. T.R. Sharma, the DDG Crop Sciences, for his kind and gracious presence this afternoon, and also for his special remarks during the function. We are extremely thankful to Dr. Danny Hunter, the senior scientist from Alliance Biodiversity International and CIAT, who is a renowned scientist, and it was a wonderful lecture. We were extremely fortunate that we got this opportunity to listen to him on this occasion. We are also extremely grateful to our farmer conservators, Shri Gopal Ji Mehta, Shri Chen Singh Ji, Dr. M. Srinivas Rao, Shri Prasid Thayal Ji, Shri Lalit Mohan Sahu Ji, and Shri Mao Shengdong Bla Ji, for sharing their experience and also highlighting their expectations from ICR. आप सभी को तहे दिल से धन्यवाद. Sincere thanks are also due to Dr. J.C. Rana for his help and for apprising us on the rematriation of land races under the JEF project. I also wish to thank all the judges and moderators of the declamation contest, Dr. K. Haridasan, Dr. P. Manivel, Dr. S.P. Elawat, Dr. Veena Gupta, and Ms. Monica, and the participating students for enthusiastically taking part. A very special thanks to all the Vice Chancellors of Agricultural Universities, the directors of ICR institutes, our very dear former directors of NBPGR, Dr. Gautam, Dr. Dillon, Dr. Sharma, and Dr. Bansal for their presence today. It was really very encouraging for all of us. Sincere thanks are also due to Dr. D.K. Yadav, ADGC, for his full support to NBPGR at all times. Thanks are due to our director, NBPGR, Dr. Kuldeep Singh, for conceiving and tirelessly steering the organization of this entire program. We sincerely thank the organizing committee, including Dr. S.P. Elawat, Sushil Pandey, Sunil Archak, Rakesh Bhardwaj, MC Singh, Amit Kumar, and Ira Vaidya for meticulously planning each and every detail and seamlessly organizing this event. Thanks are also due to the officers in charge of our regional stations, Mohar Singh Ji, Vijay Singh Meena, Anita Kodaru, M. Lata, Joseph John, R.C. Mishra, and G.D. Harish for identifying and coordinating with the conservator farmers. It was a really big effort on their part. Here, I also want to thank Dr. K.P. Mahapatra for moderating the farmers' interaction in a very interesting manner. Special thanks to Dr. Sherry for anchoring the program. Thanks are also due to Dr. R.C. Agarwal, DDG Education, for facilitating and hosting the webinar today. Mr. Vijay Mandal and Mrs. Kanchan Khurana for their logistic support. A big thank you to all the participants, colleagues from ICAR, CG Centers, PPVFRA, CSIR Institutes, MOEF, NBA, DBT, ICFRE, BSI, DRDO, State Biodiversity Boards, ISPGR members, senior retired faculty, faculty from PG School IARI, heads of divisions, officers in charges of regional stations and units, and staff and students of NBPGR for their participation. At the end, I wish to thank one and all who have contributed towards this webinar in one way or the other. Thank you very much.
And let me thank Kavita ma'am for her part. And that concludes our International Biological Diversity Day celebration 2021. Today, as we are striving to cope with severe adversities, let's take home a message of building strong resilience, which is the true essence of biodiversity. Thank you, one and all. Good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Kuldeep Singh. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Very well done.
Thank you, sir.
You so
Congratulations, Dr. Singh. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You were there, I didn't know. So thanks to Dr.
Sean.
Everybody, thanks and all of
Thank you, Dr. Sir.
Oh, Dr. Sir, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sir. Really, really nice. It's all your guidance and it's all his determination that has done it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Chandrasekhar, thank you very much.
This is fantastic. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
To see you. Namaskar, sir. Namaskar.
Namaskar, sir. Namaskar.
Good, good. Thank you from my side.
Congratulations, Dr. Kuldeep Singh.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
It's not possible to really have a look on all of them because being a smaller laptops, it's not possible to see all of them. But I could see now that section here. Dr. Agarwal sir here, of course, he is the one who's supporting for all this platform. Dr. Yadav sir, namaskar. Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Maniwal is here. Sahu sir, you are so good. I mean, you know more species than any of the scientists in the country probably knows it by heart.